Hi, my name's Ruth McDougall. I'm the Curator of Pacific Art here at the Queensland Art Gallery, Gallery of Modern Art. It's my great pleasure today to be speaking with Shannon Te Ao, who's joining us from Wellington in Aotearoa. I'd like to, before we start speaking, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here in Brisbane, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and to all Indigenous peoples here and where Shannon is speaking from as well. Shannon, one of my best memories of your work is seeing some very early on at the physics room in Christchurch, and feeling quite moved by the sense of intimacy that you had created within that space, between not just on screen, between the protagonists of your video, but also the sense of intimacy that you created with the audience. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about the influences that were around for you at that time, and what you were hoping to achieve.
Well, thanks, Ruth. Yeah, I guess I don't know, it feels kind of odd to say my early works because I don't feel like I've been making work for that long, but yeah, I could talk a little bit about, I guess, a shift that happened in my work about 10 years ago. And I suppose the visual language and the approach to kind of filmmaking in the earlier works that I did make, I guess it grew out of kind of documentary responsibilities. I was kind of making something more akin to kind of classical performance art and documenting kind of events and actions in particular sites or places that would reference historical events or something like that, and so I guess the scale of the works has always been kind of one or two people at a time, and never really, even to this day, has never really gotten beyond kind of a small handful of people having a conversation of some kind. And I suppose similarly, maybe the experience that I value at an art gallery is quite an intimate one. Whether or not you're kind of going there with lots of people or not, I think there's a part of that kind of unwritten contract, if you will, that the audience and the artwork are engaging kind of each other directly, and so I guess my kind of favorite art experiences have aligned with that kind of phenomenon. And so that's something that I kind of hold significant when I'm shooting work, but also presenting work. I guess a little bit goes a long way on both sides of the camera for me. And so I enjoy, I guess, trying to provide that kind of space for an audience, really.
Nice. More recently, you've been working with Maori translators and composers, and to either translate existing songs from popular culture or to create new ones. Why has this process become important for you?
Oh, fun, which is important to me. I mean, it's not necessarily easy, but it's an enjoyable part of the process, or an enriching part of the process always. And I guess I don't know, I think I'm an okay collaborator. There's lots I can still learn. There's lots I need to kind of practice and revisit. But I guess as a person, as an artist, I want to improve upon that kind of always, And so across all aspects of the work, I'm really interested in, I don't know, inviting more voices in and accumulating kind of layers within the image of the work because of that, And so when I'm working with people within the lyrical content, I guess those kind of decisions are informed in all kinds of reasons. Somebody might be from a particular place, speak in a particular way. They might have an area of expertise that's related to the imagery that I'm trying to draw out. more often, they're actually just people that are kind of close to me, you know, whether or not they're people writing material with me or performing, you know, even like the singers and the kind of the actors or performers that I work with are often just kind of within arm's reach of my everyday, you know, so it can happen quite organically, but I guess the ambition behind any collaboration is to push the work into territories that reveal my own blind spots or expand my vision. It's kind of the same thing, but kind of said a different way. But also, yeah, I guess what I'm kind of interested in as an artist and what I strive for is like simple things being the kind of catalyst for quite complex conversations, you know, and so layering things up, beginning open-ended conversations and kind of trying to embody that ethos within the making of the work all help in that vein, I guess.
I remember when we met you in Wellington, when we were doing our research for APT, and we were speaking to you about the work that you made prior to the one that you've created for APT, and but which has influenced, I think, this work a little. You spoke quite a lot too about Te Ao and what role it was playing in your life at that time. I was wondering whether you know, how much of that exists still within this current work.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I'm a Te Ao learner. You know, that's like I used to be embarrassed about that. Now I'm just like okay with that. You know, it's kind of part of my journey, and so be it. And so that is, I guess, you know, I have explicitly and implicitly reflected upon that fact in the work and alongside the work, I guess, too. And I guess the more I know, the more I can articulate. Oh, it's not rocket science. I guess the more I can express, and the more imagery I can open up, and the more connected I can be to what's available to me, you know. And so that's kind of my personal journey, kind of within or alongside the work. But I guess for, you know, for Māori audiences, and especially Te Reo Māori speaking audiences, I want to give them what they deserve, which is their own image in our own language, you know. And so there's that. I guess politic running throughout kind of everything I make. And also, I guess I'm kind of interested in the responsibility that we all have to the vision of this place in particular from a Māori perspective. And so on another level, it's simply more accurate to the stories that I'm trying to tell. I mean, I could say silly things like, to me, sometimes the English translations kind of sound cornier than the Te Reo Māori versions. I mean, that's a bit of a throwaway comment, but my point is that alongside all of those kind of signals that might reflect upon the current moment, we have to remember that, you know, Māori history, since the beginning of Māori history, has relied on kind of our language and the imagery that it can carry as being fundamental to maintaining our story, you know. And so it's kind of, simple and complicated, my kind of relationship with Te Reo. And I guess I am open to it being kind of simple and complicated within the work too. It's interesting when I have to bring work away from Aotearoa, negotiating all of those kind of layers, because I want people to be kind of included. I want people to have access to what I'm trying to share with them. And so, it's simple and complicated.
The essay that you've written for the publication, you're one of the couple of artists that have written their own essay for the APT publication, very poetically kind of describes that journey of making a choice between different ways of thinking about being in our current moment. And you have, for this particular work, Ira, worked with a particular song, Awaita. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and what it was saying for you about this moment.
Yeah, the work is titled Ira, and again, that's a kind of really common saying, and it's I guess most commonly kind of used. It would kind of it'd say something. It translates to like every day, and I guess it just means that's like today is the same as yesterday, and onward, and I guess I'm kind of really kind of tied to I guess the kind of one of the dynamics in the work is the imagery can kind of sound kind of fantastical, but it's not. It's everyday speak for lots of aspects of kind of Māori life, and so to me that's important, because what the work is trying to suggest on one level is that to think through or expand the kind of what we acknowledge as kind of being part of our perspective. We don't really need to change a great deal. It's just about how we articulate kind of what we see around us, really, and so I think that's a thread throughout my work, and I think within this current work it's central. And then the song in the work is titled Te Waka Waka, and it was written by Kurt Kormene, who is a collaborator that I've worked with on the last kind of 2 or 3 projects, really. I mean, he's a friend foremost, and has a kind of pretty rich life within the arts as well. And Kurt's written this song. I guess we were talking a lot about the dynamic between physical transformation and spiritual growth. And when I'm talking about spiritual growth, I'm not talking about religion or anything like that. I'm talking about, I guess, the acknowledgement of kind of the intangible around us. It's kind of really what I'm talking about. There were things happening in Kurt's life, things happening in my life that kind of had us revisiting this long-term conversation. And of course, all of this is happening under the cloud of a global pandemic. And so I guess the kind of all of the conventional kind of indicators, or the commonly used kind of indicators that might guide us, are all under kind of interrogation at the moment, and so again, it's a simple starting point that could blow out to a much more kind of complex and conflated and expanded conversation. But quite simply, Te Waka Waka is one of the names we give to the fantail here in Aotearoa, and the story of Te Waka Waka, I guess, travels through lots of other lots of Māori narratives. Generally speaking, however, Te Waka Waka is generally a sign of, I don't know, that death is near, or that mortality should be acknowledged. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Is that and so again, we have this kind of like very common kind of bird that is this kind of literally everyday reminder to kind of prod us to think about, I guess, the parts of our lives that we come from and kind of attend to that but can't see, and so it seems like a really good time to be thinking about those things and to be reevaluating just the the kinds of cues that we draw from life, really, you know. And so, yeah, it's not a happy song. It's not a sad song. It's super simple. It's really about how Te Waka Waka would travel throughout the day, where they might go, and I guess there is some suggestion that that kind of knowledge and the understanding of things like our relationship to mortality is an enriching and also a weighty kind of weighty thing to kind of carry with us, you know. The work is constructed almost entirely through black and white film negative scans, and so there's a series of over 100 or so stills that operate across 3 channels of video. And I guess it's like a walk-in slideshow or something like that. But I guess, you know, my ambition is to again interrogate quite simply how we tell stories and how we kind of perceive narrative. And so across 3 different channels, the viewer will be, I guess, presented a range of stills. And so because of that, the work visually is told out in kind of plots rather than a sequential arc. And so what viewers will witness is a really quite humble story about 2 boys running through a valley, which is, I guess, kind of important to me as it's one of the valleys that well, I'll just say one of the valleys that I call home is what I'll say. And it's been featured in a number of my recent works as well. And so it's kind of like somewhere between a real and fictional place. And what is it? So, yeah, these 2 young men, boys, essentially are kind of dancing in this valley while they consider the content of the song and the message that it carries. Really, it's not made clear within the work who's singing it or when they're actually kind of singing it, but the kind of editing is constructed in a way where over the course of the song, which is about 6 or 7 minutes, the kind of their geographical journey actually goes much further than you'd think they'd be able to, really. And so it's a slow song and dance film with 2 boys singing about becoming a bird. Really is the kind of the simple version of the intro.
Sounds beautiful. You've used that image or that you've used 2 people dancing in previous works. And I know when we first were talking about creating new work for APT, you said that it was quite important to you to be referencing and returning to and to keep on bringing into play conversations that you'd had before. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's I guess it's I don't know, it's this trait that I just can't seem to shake, really,
Yeah.
which is to remake the things that I make. And I guess what entices me to do so is that every time I feel like I'm able to get more out of this, you know, the world that the body of work is depicting. And that, I guess that's important to me because it gives me room to explore a kind of political imaginary within the work and enrich that. And so, yeah, again, this work, the work for the APT will have a really similar kind of visual starting point. It's hard to say. I think that sometimes these boys are dancing, and sometimes they're just running and playing, and then sometimes they're in a different kind of embrace. and I guess the details of kind of exactly what they're doing are less of a priority for me, but the fact that they're trying to do it, exchange, you know, such a conversation, you know, to really talk
Yeah,
about the kind of the big questions, you know,
yeah,
and they're doing that in a way that is kind of shared intimately, but also physically kind of intimate as well, is something that just intrigues me. It's still, as a person, it blows my mind that humans are kind of capable of such uh, amazing things, really, and that
yeah,
we can be running around playing a game, dancing like birds, but still kind of thinking about what it means to be alive and what it means to be present,
yeah,
and what are kind of good ways of being alongside of each other, you know. And so
yeah,
um, yeah, that refrain still remains in the work, and I guess train spotters, people that might be familiar with my recent work, could genuinely recognize some of the landscapes from previous works, because I'm kind of at this point where the way that this work was constructed is by using rear projections as kind of backdrops for the eventual action to take place. And all of the backdrops are taken from kind of my own archives. They're either
yeah,
pieces of footage that didn't make it into old works, or pieces of footage that have been specifically drawn from old works. And so, again, it's for me about kind of stepping into the world of the work, quite literally,
mhm,
and kind of, I guess, seeing more about what uh, you know, what's emerging here, what's the kind of, what's the message.
yeah. As you were talking then, another conversation that we had earlier on came to mind where you were actually describing Te Waka Waka, and the way that that bird negotiates not just that line between mortality and life, but also quite often the edge of between earth and air and
Mm,
sea,
mm, mm, mm,
and
mm,
that
mm.
kind of physical space. And yeah, just got this very clear kind of image of this bird moving in, you know, negotiating a physical currents as well. Yeah, quite
Yeah,
beautiful.
well, I don't know, I feel it whenever I see one of these little unassuming friends, and I especially well, I don't know what it's like in Australia at the moment, but over here when I see one with my friends or with my partner or my family, then everyone is the same. We're all just like trying to contextualize what that might mean. Um, and so it's a real, I don't know, it's a real kind of relational kind of
Yeah,
dynamic, and I guess what I'm trying to think about and what I'm trying to kind of think through as a person is kind of that, what is the context of that relationship? You know, is it just kind of night and day? Is it just land and sea? Surely not. You know,
yeah,
it's much kind of deeper and
yeah,
much more kind of expansive than that. You know,
yeah,
yeah, that gives me some, I don't know, it gives me a different kind of perspective. I think, not that I've kind of figured it out or anything,
yeah,
but I guess the work kind of, you know, the imagery in the work kind of drags me into kind of consideration of that kind of stuff. You know?
yeah. Your work has always given me the sense of providing space for,
Mm.
like it, yeah, it just creates those moments um, to dwell, I guess, which is
Yeah,
quite a beautiful thing.
I hope so. You know, like I want, and I don't even, I'm not so embarrassed to say this, but I want people to be moved. You know,
Yeah,
and I want people to want to spend time with the work, and I want that time and space to, you know, help people reflect upon why they're being moved. What is it about this
yeah,
thing that's kind of like shifting something inside of them, even for a moment. You know, what am I trying to share with them? What is this? You know, what are they bringing to their work? You know, and for me, you know, it's one of the reasons I'm working in a kind of filmic way. Is it seems the kind of contract between kind of time and space, the experience of the work, the duration of the work, and an audience kind of attention span or kind of commitment to engage in their own experiences. I don't know, it seems kind of on show, or seems kind of like explicit in a way that intrigues me to keep making more song and dance videos.
Even the way that you've installed it, the 3 screens, the relationship between them, they're not all in one flat plane, the way that they lean against a wall, it invites an audience to consider their own body in relationship to these images. I think in a much more tactile way than straight onto a wall or onto, you know, screens on one plane.
Yeah, I've always been invested in, I guess, complicating the imagery beyond just the content or beyond the event that you're trying to depict. And, you know, for me, within a gallery setting, and I love galleries, by the way, you know, yeah, I love them, I guess, for being the good facilitators of the kind of experience that I want for my work, actually. And so, anyway, what I mean is that, yeah, I've always been invested in complicating the imagery, spatializing it, breaking it apart, compressing it and stretching it apart, you know, using stills and video, even multiple channels, even kind of the size of a room, I think can all encourage a kind of multiplicity of response across an audience, you know, and yeah, I want to bring as many voices into the work as possible, and as many perspectives to be available within the work and within an experience of the work. You know, sure, it's a Māori-led vision, you know, but there is something in it for all of us, you know, is my hope anyway. And so, you know, different ways of kind of, what do I say? I don't want to say fracturing, but I guess simply put, I've always been interested in the idea that you can't see an image completely from one position.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that simple refrain, I guess, prompts a lot of, you know, relatively simple decisions, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's where all that's coming from. Yeah.
So at the end of your essay, you say, and the full title for the work is Ira, Ira, Fly High, Fly Low. And you say, I want to be that bird. Can you just, to finish up, explain us what you imagine that feels like to be that bird?
Of course, you know, sometimes I literally do want to be that bird, for sure. But I guess I want to be somebody that, and this is the suggestion in the work, is I really just ponder this for whoever you are, whatever this means to you, is you maybe the kind of, you know, 7 or so minutes you spend with the work is enough to kind of start something kind of turning over inside you. But for me, yeah, I do want to have a better relationship with things that I can't see. And I do, you know, it is kind of fundamental within Māori custom to pay respects to that, you know, and so I'm always kind of working towards that in kind of language, in my work and in my lived experience, you know, which I suppose, you know, I really encourage us to kind of do the same, you know, and I think if we're able to kind of think beyond, you know, the things that are quite simply in front of us, then perhaps we're getting closer to actually being able to relate, you know, and actually be in a position to take better care of each other, you know. It's not lost on me that, you know, well, you know, my Māori audience here in Aotearoa, for example, are still marginalised in so many aspects of our life, you know, and so yes, it is an important message of inclusivity, but it's you know, um, it is as much about kind of empathy being an exchange as kind of anything else, you know.